Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnLine. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner, who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. And also joining us is the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael World B. Freer, who's a senior writer at StatFactor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 146, the John Konchar episode, as the Grizzlies forward has worn number 46 for each of his 6 seasons in the NBA. One quick reminder before we get started here tonight. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And fellas, I figured we would start out by discussing some hot teams around the association, and it's only appropriate to start off by discussing the Cleveland Cavaliers first, as they became the first team to 50 wins this season. They had themselves a nice weekend with a huge come-from-behind win versus Boston on Friday night, and then followed that up by holding off a streaking Blazers team in overtime on Sunday, and did so without their star Donovan Mitchell. The Cavs have now set a franchise record for 10 games consecutive win streaks in a single season, with 3 such streaks on the season. And they became only the 7th team in NBA history with 3 10-game winning streaks in a season. Pretty impressive there, Bruce.
You know, the Cavaliers are starting to look a lot like last year's Celtics team, if you ask me. As
They
you
really
mentioned, they've currently won 10 straight. They had a 15-game win streak to start the season. They had a 12-game win streak between late December and early January, and their worst 10-game stretch of the season was 5-5. They're the first team to 50 wins. Their 50-10 record's the NBA's best. They have the best home record and the best road record. They basically clinched the best record in the East about 2 months ago.
They really did. And DeAndre Hunter will be. He has been an impactful player so far in a Cavaliers uniform, hit a big 3 down the stretch to seal the deal in overtime against the Blazers on Sunday. What's your takeaway from this team, and how do you look at them moving forward into the playoffs?
Well, they're, as Bruce mentioned, they're the best team in the league right now. I mean, they're even, one up on the Thunder. I mean, their offense has been unbelievable since the start of the year. You mentioned the win streaks, Ross. They're playing the Bulls on Tuesday. To put this win streak thing in perspective, they, as you mentioned, they have 3 win streaks of 10-plus games. Since Michael Jordan retired from the Bulls in 27 seasons, they have 1 win streak of 10-plus games, and that was back in 12 years ago. So I mean, this is an impressive run they're on here. I mean, you realize 2 more wins, and they will have the most wins for a non-LeBron Cavs team in 30 years, since 92-93, when Lenny Wilkins had them, winning 50-plus every year. So I mean, it's quite a run they're on here. They're the best shooting team in the league. They're the most efficient team in the league. They have a chance here to be the team that has the most efficient offense in NBA history and have the best shooting team in NBA history with their effective field goal percentage. Both those marks were set last season, by the way, by the Celtics in offensive efficiency and the Pacers in effective field goal percentage. And the Cavaliers could top them both this season.
You mentioned the game against the Celtics on Friday, Ross. The score at one point in that game was 25-3 in the first quarter. And it looked like the mercy rule might have been needed. And Jason Tatum, who had 46, 16, and 9, even taunted the Cavs when they called a timeout at 25-3. And it was like, oh boy, what did you do that for? But, Cleveland responded with a 23-13 run and only trailed by 11 after 1, which is no biggie. Then Donovan Mitchell absolutely cooked Boston in the second quarter with 12, added 14 more in the third, added 12 more in the fourth, finished with 41. Cleveland's bench outscored Boston's 33-6 in that game. They won going away. And as for Spider, Boston has never figured out a way to slow that guy down, and that's going to have to be their top priority if they meet Cleveland in the playoffs.
Yeah, it really will be. He's had their number all season long, which is the reason I feel like the Cavs have had a lot of success against Boston this year is just the impressive performances that Donovan Mitchell has displayed in those games. He really steps up in those big moments. We obviously saw that from him even back to his days with the Utah Jazz when they were back in the postseason. It seems like that was decades ago at this point, but he has been a huge leader for this team. And in the games that he doesn't play, Darius Garland also steps up quite a bit.
By the way, you mentioned how Donovan Mitchell dominates the Celtics. He had the highest scoring average ever against Boston Celtics, even more than Michael Jordan. So he's 30.7 points per game, something in his career, obviously going back to Utah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He dominates the Celtics for whatever reason. And his scoring is a little bit down from what we're used to seeing from him, but he's shooting better from the outside than he ever has. And the reason, obviously, that his scoring is down a little bit is because Darius Garland is having a career year, or is having a better year than last season, and Evan Mobley's having a career year of scoring. So that it's worth having Donovan Mitchell score just a little bit less on average if you're going to get those two guys going the way they're going this season.
Now, Bruce, I know I think I speak for World Being myself here. You take a bit of a closer look at these Cavs-Celtics matchups. So I'm curious, as far as slowing Donovan Mitchell down, say, come playoff time, who would be your ideal defender on the Celtics for Spida?
Well, I think they need to give him different looks. I mean, I think Jaylen Brown should look at him a little bit. I think Derek White should look at him a little bit. I think Jrue Holiday should look at him a little bit because he wears, he'll wear one guy out because he'll figure out how to attack them and go. Jaylen Brown's a little bigger. He's about 6'7". Holiday 6'4", Derek White 6'4". Spider's what, like 6'3"?
Yeah,
6'3", 6. So all three of those guys have a height advantage, but I think the key is going to be they got to rotate guys and show him different looks, and it still might not work because it's not like they haven't tried that before.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the luxuries of the Celtics with the defenders that they have on their roster, given opposing offensive players different looks. And I think I agree with you. That was a wise answer there, Bruce. I think throwing different guys, having fresher legs on him for spurts is probably your best bet on trying to slow him down. Now, let's go ahead and stay out east here as the Detroit Pistons remain red hot as well. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games with wins over the Clippers, Celtics, and Nets last week. Their only loss came at home against the Joker on a back-to-back for the Nuggets, and boy, did the Joker show out in that one. But Bruce, you mentioned at the start of the season really liking this team, and I got to be honest with you, I'm starting to be a guy that also is buying the hype.
Well, that was probably one of my best preseason predictions. I was telling our listeners, buy Detroit Pistons stock. They won only 14 games last season and 17 the year before that. So this year's team has 34 wins, which is more than those last two seasons combined, and there's still 21 games remaining. They're comfortably in the 6th spot in the East with a playoff spot all but assured at this point. They bottomed out at 11-17 on December 19th, but they're 23-10 since then. They've won 9 of their last 10, including a 20-point destruction over the Celtics last Wednesday.
World B, what's your thoughts on Motor City?
A really fun team to watch here. They get a higher percentage of their scoring on the fast break than any team in the league. And overall, they're second in fast break scoring behind only the Nuggets. And when they met in that game last week, Pistons actually had more fast break points than Denver. I think by 22, 21, whatever. But yeah, they're a fun team. They get up and down. They have one of my favorite stats of the season. Since the NBA started tracking offensive efficiency, there's only been one team since 1996-97. There's only one team that has never scored or averaged 110 points per 100 possession, and that's the Pistons over 20 some odd seasons. And they look like they're at about 113 per 100 this season. So they're going to match that. Their defense is much improved from a season ago, about 6 fewer points per game from a season ago. And the one thing I will caution about the Pistons before we Bruce is right. I can't see him not getting a playoff spot at this point. But they played the fewest games against the Western Conference so far this season, entering this week, 17 all season. So they got a lot of Western Conference teams left on their schedule. And so we'll see how they come out of that, out of this fire, if you will, from playing all those teams in the West, where their record is, where we think of them as a team. Right now, I mean, if it's not Kenny Atkinson for Coach of the Year, it's got to be J.B. Bickerstaff, right?
Yeah, I totally think so. And I think there's a world where there's an argument for that. I just find it hard to believe that he'd get the majority vote over the Cleveland Cavaliers, given where they are in the standings. But good point.
One of the reasons I like them coming into the season, we know all about their young core. Cade Cunningham, first-time All-Star, Ozar Thompson, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, who's been out for 2 months, but he may be back in time for the playoffs. But they added like some really good veteran guys. Malik Beasley now has sort of, put himself at the head of that class with his three-point shooting. Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, and recently acquired Dennis Schroeder even. So if they do hang on to that number 6 spot, it's very likely that they're going to play the Knicks in the first round of the playoffs. That would shape up as a truly competitive series. It could have upset written all over it. And, the Pistons have played the Knicks 3 times this year, and they've won twice. So they have one more game remaining with them on April 10th. So, yeah, it's just fun to watch a young team like this grow before our very eyes.
It really is. And you had mentioned Ozar Thompson and how young this team is. World B, you mentioned how good their defense has been here recently as well. And I just wanted to point out, for as much love and attention as Amen Thompson's been receiving in Houston this year, let's not forget about his twin brother, Ozar, who had himself a fine month of February, averaging nearly 13 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. And speaking of that defense, he averaged nearly 3 steals a game at 2.8 per contest. So that's a huge deal for Detroit moving forward. And they're definitely, fueled off the defensive stops, the rebounding of Jalen Duren and getting out and scoring the basketball behind their leading scorer, Cade Cunningham, who just averages over a hair over 25 points per game. Now let's take a quick break, and then we'll take a quick look at the Western Conference. And we're back here on 48 Minutes. Let's go ahead and discuss the Western Conference and some of the hot teams there. And we're going to start out with J.J. Redick and the Los Angeles Lakers, who are now 12-2 in their last 14 games. This past weekend, the Lake Show hosted the Crosstown Clippers not once, but twice, winning both of those in the battle for L.A. Luka seems to have found his groove, scoring 31 points on Friday, followed that up nicely with 29 points on Sunday. And if you ask me, LeBron looks pretty rejuvenated out there with Luka on board. A much more energized LeBron James out there on the floor since the trade deadline. And despite the Mark Williams trade falling through at the deadline for the Lakers, all of a sudden they now find themselves second out west, Bruce.
You can really see the chemistry between LeBron and Luka developing pretty quickly. Some of those length of the court passes from Luka to LeBron have been absolutely things of beauty. Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady would be proud of those. As you said, LeBron seems rejuvenated, and the look on his face after some of those passes has been telling. It's almost like this look of wonder on his face that somebody can, get him those kind of looks, because he's running hard down the court, and it just gently falls into his hands. Just unbelievably beautiful passing. For much of the season prior to the trade, I thought the Lakers looked like a good team that had a chance to be, top 4 in the West. Didn't really seem like a team that had a chance to win it all. And I said as much recently, about in the last show or two. But losing Anthony Davis, our best defensive player, leading scorer, bringing in Luka looked like a long-term plus, but maybe a short-term minus. And then, as you mentioned, the Mark Williams trade was canceled. It looked like Rob Pelinka's plan hit a major speed bump without getting that defensive big. But they have been winning with defense in addition to their great offense.
They sure have. And there's a chance we could get that Dallas Lakers first-round matchup if the Mavericks are able to win the play-in, which would be quite interesting there. World B, what's your thoughts on the new look Lakers?
They've been as impressive as any team out west since the All-Star break. You mentioned six wins in a row now, entering this week. Only the Cavs, with that 10-game win streak, has a longer current win streak in the NBA. They're really impressive because since the All-Star break, they're dominating the first quarter. They're winning the first quarter by an average of almost 10 points per game, or per quarter, I should say, plus 8 points per quarter advantage in the first quarter. And then in the end of games, in those clutch minutes, 5 of the 6 games since the All-Star break have had clutch minutes in them, and they're 5-1 in those games. And the defense, look what they did. Bruce mentioned the defense. Look what they did against the Clippers down the stretch over the weekend. 2 games, 4 minutes of clutch time play. They shut out the Clippers. 0 for 8 from the field, 0 for 5 from 3. Outscored them 7-0. I mean, that's really impressive stuff. Now, granted, the Clippers' offense is nothing to jump up and down about, but to still hold the team, shut them out, not once but twice in those clutch minutes when the game is on the line, and you have James Harden and you have Kawhi Leonard. I mean, it's really impressive what they're doing right now. And as Bruce mentioned, their offense with LeBron and Luka has been great, but it's really their defense that is carrying this team to the position it's at.
In a couple of their recent wins, they held Nikola Jokic to 12 points. They held Anthony Edwards to 18 points. And now that they're second in the West behind OKC, they're not going to catch the Thunder for the top conference record. We know that. But if these two teams were to meet in the Western Conference Finals, it's entirely possible that a veteran Lakers team might have enough experience and cachet to knock off a young Thunder team. And it would be a fascinating Western Conference Final if we see those two guys playing each other.
Yeah, it really would be. And I think the scary part for the Thunder and their fans is the fact that you would not want that game to be a close one down the stretch if it was a Lakers Thunder matchup, because the Lakers got LeBron and Luka. I don't know how many other guys you'd want having the ball in their hands with in the closing seconds of a game to maybe decide their fate. So keep an eye on the Los Angeles Lakers. Obviously, at the top, one of the things you mentioned, Bruce, that has certainly stood out to me is those long passes, as you mentioned, from Luka to LeBron. I'm almost like a quarterback and a wide receiver out there. That's something LeBron's used to all the way back from his days with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kevin Love was one of the greatest at those outlet passes as well. So I think Luka might even just be a hair better being a point guard out there on the floor and being able to handle the ball and push it ahead like that. But it's something that he became well adjusted to in Cleveland, and I think he's more than happy to welcome having those opportunities back because it's leading to some easy buckets for the King.
Now, look at how he's busted his butt getting down court, too. I mean, he is flying down the court.
He
is. 40-year-old LeBron is still one of the fastest guys end-to-end in the league.
He is, and I can't blame him for not running the court hard when D'Angelo Russell's in the backcourt, because that he might not even look up from the ball to see who's open. He's looking to get a shot up there, but obviously going from D'Lo to Luka is quite the point guard upgrade. Now, from the top of the Western Conference standings to near the bottom, I'm continuing to monitor a developing situation with one of my favorite teams, and that is the Portland Trailblazers, who as of Monday night picked up another big-time win on the road in Philadelphia, 119-102. They've rattled off 4 straight wins heading into Sunday's tough matchup against Cleveland, and almost walked away victorious as they suffered a tough overtime loss against the best team in the East in Cleveland, but bounced back, as I mentioned, on Monday in Philadelphia, getting a big win there. And of course, the Dallas Mavericks have already lost Anthony Davis to injury. And this weekend, the Sacramento Kings suffered some unfortunate news as well, as Domantas Sabonis will be sidelined at least a week due to a grade 1 left hamstring strain. So I've got a loaded question for you guys. World B, I'll start with you on this one. But can both the Kings and Mavs hold on to their playoff spot or play-in spots, or will we see that Portland Trailblazers sneak in?
The quick answer is no, you will not see the Blazers sneak in, but that doesn't mean they haven't been an impressive team to watch, a fun team to watch. You and I, Ross, we watch a lot of these games out west on the NBA package, and I'm impressed with the Blazers because you hear about, it's a cliche for people to say, and I'm going to be guilty of it here in a second, how a team reflects their coach. I think that's a little bit of a overrated thing or a cliche, but the Blazers absolutely reflect the way Chauncey Billups plays. Their defense is finally coming around and playing really well. I mean, since beginning of February, they have the fourth best defense in the league. And the three teams ahead of them, the Lakers, Cleveland, and Detroit, they've only been 32-6 since the beginning of February. So it's not like they're way behind some scrubs there. So, and they come at you every night. They give you an honest effort every night these days. And they don't back down from anybody. We saw that last week against Cleveland. Chauncey Billups never backed down from anybody. It's we know watching him play. So this is a team. I don't think they're going to get to that 10th spot. The only reason I say that is because I think their offense is a little too inconsistent to come up with enough points to win big games. You look at their top 5 scorers since the beginning of February, only one or none are shooting better than 35% from 3. So you got to be able to hit the outside shot. They just don't have enough consistency offensively. They have firepower. They have potential every night with Simons and Shaedon Sharpe, guys like that. I just don't see it consistently enough to overtake those guys. But yeah, I love watching them play.
Yeah, but they allowed Andre Drummond to get 18 rebounds on Monday night. You okay with that, Ross?
I love it. Andre Drummond, one of the best rebounders of all time in my book.
I think, Portland's schedule's just, first of all, they'd have to make up 5 games in the loss column to catch Dallas and 6 in the loss column to catch Sac. They have a brutal schedule. It's too tough. I mean, they have Boston twice, New York twice, Golden State twice, Denver, Cleveland, and Memphis. Sorry, but they're going to be in the lottery again in spite of making a lot of great progress this season. Dallas will hang in there. Sacramento is going to hang in there. They're fortunate in that, while they lost Domantas Sabonis, they picked up Jonas Valanciunas prior to the trade deadline, and he came in, after Domas was injured 1 minute into the Houston game over the weekend. JV played 30 minutes, had 15 points, 14 boards, 3 blocks, and 4 steals. So if he's going to put up any kind of stat lines like that, that should allow Sac to kind of hang on to that 9 spot. So I think they'll be all right. But Portland, good job this season, but you'll be making a tea time around mid-April.
Well, let me enjoy it while it lasts, Bruce. We'll celebrate the win tonight and kind of still being at the top of the play-in considerations out west for the time being. And maybe they'll surprise us all, and we'll be talking about the Blazers come playoff time. But I'm glad you mentioned the acquisition of Jonas Valanciunas for the Sacramento Kings, because without that, I would probably say that Blazers do have a chance to beat the Kings. I think that the Kings would have dramatically dropped off without Sabonis out there had they not acquired a guy like Valanciunas. I mean, as much crap as we gave the Kings front office for their trade, acquiring Zach LaVine, getting Valanciunas now that Sabonis is out is going to be pretty nice for them, and he's going to play a major factor for this team. And we all know he's more than capable of playing starter minutes and putting up starters numbers as he did against Houston.
He's also got fresh legs, because when he started the season in Washington, he didn't exactly play big minutes. So he's going to have, he's pretty fresh. So, I mean, it's, very fortunate, as you mentioned, for him.
Absolutely. Now we're going to take one more final break here, and then we're going to come back and talk about some injury bugs right after this. And we're back, and let's go ahead and get to some injury news out east. And World B, stop me if you've heard this before. The Orlando Magic got some unfortunate news last Friday as the team learned Jalen Suggs suffered a setback in his recovery and will now undergo arthroscopic surgery to remove a cartilage fragment in his left knee, and will be out indefinitely. The Magic hold a record of just 5-6 since January 25th when Suggs first went down, and boy, I don't really like their chances much more without Jalen Suggs out there.
Well, stop me if you've heard this before, but they can't shoot.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've heard that before.
Yes, you have. I mean, too late. You're not stopping me on this one. I mean, they're just, I'm not only am I the biggest Magic fan in this trio here, I'm one of the biggest ones you probably know. Yeah. But I mean, it is what it is. It's just they can't shoot. They can't generate enough offense. And now their defense is starting to starting to suffer here. I mean, look what Steph Curry did last week against KCP. It was just 56 points, and most of it against Caldwell Pope. So they're just it's just a bad situation right here. Here's how bad it is. At the All-Star break, they were last in three-point shooting at 30.6%. And since the All-Star breaks, they've gotten worse.
Ugh.
How do you get worse than that? Well, you shoot 29.7% since the break. Since the beginning of February, of their top 6 scorers, 4 are shooting less than 30% on threes. How are you supposed to do it? Here's the worst one of all. I'm a big Banchero fan. I love him. I tout him as an all-star his rookie year. There are 5 players in the league averaging at least 20 points a game, and they're taking at least 5 3-pointers a game, and they're shooting less than 33% on threes. The Magic have 2 of the 5, in Franz Wagner and Banchero. I mean, how are you supposed to win games like that? It's just Jalen Suggs would make a difference. I want to see this team at full strength. I said a month or 2 ago that at full strength, this team was the biggest challenger to the Boston Celtics. Now, that was way, way off base as it turned out. But I'd really like to see them at full strength, healthy, and see how they could do. But until they find some offense and shooters, this team is just not going to go anywhere.
Earlier in the season when Banchero and Franz Wagner missed a ton of games, the Magic were able to kind of keep their collective heads above water. There were 23 and 22 with Paolo and Franz missing a combined 54 games. But during that time, they did have Suggs on the floor with his solid two-way play and his 16 points a game. But since he suffered that injury in early January, he's missed 25 games. The team is just 7 and 18 in those 25 games. So they've slipped to number 8 in the East. And, they're still in decent position to make the play-in tournament. But, poor Jamahl Moseley, he's had to use 13 different guys in the starting lineup. And the continuity and chemistry just hasn't been there for a team that was expected to be kind of a solid playoff team with a chance at maybe even winning 50 games this year. Suggs, Banchero, and Wagner have played just 6 games together all season. And, with Suggs, he's probably not the best player on the Magic, but he reminds me a little bit of Derek White in Boston. You don't realize how good he is until he's not on the court. And the team's record of 7 and 18 without him is evidence.
Yeah, you don't know what you have until it's gone, and that has been the case with Jalen Suggs. Well said there, Bruce. And it's pretty wild just how much has changed with your Orlando Magic. I mean, going into the season, this was absolutely a team I would not want to face in the first round of the playoffs, just given the success that they had with their team last year and then coming into this year and the hot start they got out to. It's really a shame just to see the injury bug really bite them. Will be my last question on the Orlando Magic for you. At this rate, just given how bad the shooting's been and just desperate times call for desperate measures, would you go out and maybe find the hottest shooter in the G League and just sign him? Like maybe like a Garrison Matthews 2.0 and just throw him out there. Hey, this guy's shooting 46% from 3 in the G League. Let's try him out.
I don't think if you're in the position that the Magic are in, you're opposed to any ideas at this point, honestly. Yeah, I mean, if there's people in the G League that can help out, by all means. I mean, they're bringing guys out. One thing they weren't able to do when they had full healthy roster, Cole Anthony was just buried on the bench, wasn't doing anything, and he bailed them out of some really tough games when the injury bug hit them. And now he's putting them in the starting lineup, either by necessity or the fact that he's the only one of the rare consistent offensive performance they have and shooters. So, the problem is really on the roster. Gary Harris Jr. has been injured and can't shoot. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is probably the worst free agent signing in the NBA this season. He was terrible. On the same night that Steph Curry went for 56 points in 44 minutes, KCP went 44 minutes and scored nothing. I mean, that's your. You
were updating us on that.
Oh, you couldn't believe you can't make the numbers sometimes just write their own story, and that was the case. So the problem lies within this team. Yeah, you can go get somebody out of the G League and maybe piece together 5-6 minutes with a guy like that, or 20 to get them shooting. They absolutely need shooting. There's no, I'm not opposed to seeing him do anything at this point, but it's just the season seems like it's a lost season.
Yeah. Well, I've got one suggestion. John Jenkins, give him a call. He's a former first round draft pick who can really shoot it. I'd like to see him get a shot with the Orlando Magic. More injury news surfaced this weekend as well, and this one involves a usual suspect, let's say, and that is Joel Embiid, as he has been ruled out medically, unable to play, and will miss the remainder of the season due to a lingering left knee injury that we've known all about this entire season, probably even before the extension was signed. Philadelphia knew about it. So, Bruce, where do the 76ers go from here?
You know, let me digress a little bit here. I'm really starting to feel like Embiid is this generation's version of the late, great Bill Walton. I mean, Bill was the number one overall pick in the 74 draft. He was the MVP in 78 in his fourth NBA season. He won a chip in his third season. He led the league in rebounds and block shots. He's in the Hall of Fame. Joel was the number 3 overall pick in the 2014 draft, probably would have been the number 1 overall pick, but they knew he had injury issues even before he left the University of Kansas. He was, he won the MVP in his 7th season. He had finished second twice before that. He missed his entire first 2 seasons, and his career has been plagued by injuries ever since. In his 9 active seasons, he's never played more than 68 regular season games, and he's only played 19 this season before the shutdown. He's a 2-time scoring champ. He'll likely be a future Hall of Famer. Both he and Walton were warriors. They tried to play hurt because they were good teammates, right? In Embiid's case, the only negative that I would have on him is to ask, why was it more important to play in the 2024 Olympics than to prepare for the Sixers season? I know he was very proud to represent the USA in Paris, but, the Sixers pay his salary, and he owed them his best. And I think part of the reason he hasn't been healthy this season was because of the Olympics. And I think if I'm in Philadelphia's management, I'm got a real sour taste in my mouth about this. Nick Nurse in particular, I would think.
Yeah, and what's strange about that is the fact that Joel Embiid said that he might not even play for Team USA in the next Olympics. So, I mean, it's not like I can't figure the guy out, and doesn't seem like many can at this point. World B, do you have anything to add here on Philadelphia and the disastrous season they're having?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. First, there's nobody that, as a Knicks fan, there's nobody who's a bigger critic of MD than me, simply because I thought he made a dirty play on Mitchell Robinson last year in the playoffs and sidelined Mitchell Robinson until last week. So that's how long Mitchell Robinson was impacted by what I thought was a dirty play by MD. That being said, a couple of things. I don't disagree with anything that Bruce said about the Olympics and Joel Embiid's presence there. Also, don't remember, I know Steph Curry got all the glory and LeBron James got the most valuable player, whatever. The U.S. does not win the gold medal without Joel Embiid against Serbia and then against France there. He was outstanding in his limited minutes there. When they made the big comeback against Serbia, he was one of the keys. So he gets props for that. The other thing is, I will say this. I don't think there are 5 centers in the history of this league with a better offensive game than Joel Embiid. He's that special as an offensive player. Bruce mentioned the scoring titles, and his points per minute is historic level. He was last season before he got hurt. He was having a better season in points per minute than Wilt Chamberlain was. Here he averaged 50 points a game. And so having Wilt Chamberlain average more than 48 minutes that game too, because he never fouled out. But Joel Embiid, before he got hurt, was, he missed that extended period of time at the end of last season, was right ahead of that pace. So he is an extraordinary offensive player. The injuries have certainly taken away a lot of what we could have seen from Joel Embiid. He's probably a Hall of Famer, his resume being what it is. I mean, he could have been an all-time great, and now we don't know if he'll really ever play again.
Another thought about the comparison or contrast with Bill Walton. Bill eventually reinvented himself late in his career as a 6th man on the 1986 Celtics. He won 6th Man of the Year that year. They won a championship, his second. But it's highly unlikely that Embiid could even consider following that path. Bill, in his 1986 season made $425,000. Okay. Embiid has 4 years left on his deal for a total of around $243 million, or around $60 million a year average for the next 4. Even if it was the best way to keep him healthy and maximize his skills for the good of the team, it's hard to ever imagine a six-man, him accepting a six-man role at that, in that pay category.
No, not in this day and age. I can't see Embiid, of all players, being willing to make a move like that. And we also had some more IL moves with the Philadelphia 76ers. I had talked about it last week. I couldn't believe that Paul George was continuing to do his podcast, given the performance he's been having so far on the court. And, having him talk about basketball off the court just seems like that would be fuel for fire for Philly fans. But Podcast P has decided to go on the IL of podcasting for rest and focus on the season. So glad to see he's finally got his priorities straight there. Anything to add there, Podcast B?
No, I just, no, I wish we had his downloads. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
And by the way, I mean, seriously, on a series now with the 76ers, it's been a disastrous season. They were supposed to contend for the East title, and it ended up they're going to probably miss out on even the play-in. But they had, they showed out over the weekend by beating the Warriors, and hats off to my man ex-Nick Quentin Grimes with a career-high 44 in that game. But they beat the Warriors in a big win for them. But the game before it, 2 games earlier, they were playing against the Bulls in what at that time was a key game for the play-in tournament at home. And in the fourth quarter, they were down 50. So this has been a disastrous season. I know it lands a lot on MD because of his injuries, but this has been a disastrous season all the way around. Paul George, if it wasn't for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Paul George would probably get the award for the biggest free agent bust of the season in the NBA, because his numbers just aren't even close to what you expected coming from LA to Philly. They were, like I said, they were expected to challenge. We were talking about the Knicks and the Sixers being the biggest contenders before the season to Boston. And now it's, they're not going to even, within, in all likelihood, not going to make the play-in.
Yeah, quite incredible, just the drop-off that they've had this season, given the season projections. And I just want to point out one last final thought here on Podcast P is the fact, Bruce, you mentioned the amount of downloads that his podcast receives. Well, unlike Paul George, we've never missed a week. So come on, guys. We need some of those listeners to come our way here on 48 Minutes.
Our podcast, 48 Minutes, has been downloaded in more than 100 different countries. So, even awesome. Places where they don't even speak English, they listen to us. So, maybe we should learn some new languages. I don't know.
For sure. And shout out to... Yes.
A lot of people don't think I speak English sometimes. So
shout out to our fans worldwide. We definitely appreciate you guys there. Bruce, let's get to our final thoughts. One quick thing before we do get to our final thoughts. Seems like Jimmy Butler still got stuff going on in Miami, doesn't he?
He's moved 3,000 miles west from Miami to the Bay Area, but, there may be some unfinished business for him in his previous city. He's being sued for damages and unpaid rent by the company he rented a luxury house from in Miami Beach. The suit claims he failed to pay $260,000 in rent, which, believe it or not, is 2 months' rent, $130K a month for rent where he was renting, and caused damages of more than $127,000. The suit claims Butler changed the locks and would not give a key to the property owner. Look, it's not a criminal matter. He's not going to jail, but just some more bad feelings he leaves behind in South Florida.
Bad feelings and a bad look will be, you ever been stuck in that position, owing that much rent?
Oh, yeah. I mean, fortunately for me, I always have my wallet. I can just pull out and about $130,000 bill.
Me too.
Wow. Those are for the grown-ups there, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, pretty wild there. And I wonder if that's the house we saw in the Netflix series last year when they showcased Jimmy Butler as part of the 4 players that were involved in that. But get that paid, Jimmy. We got to see you move on from everything Miami and focus in on things in the Bay. All right, Bruce, final thoughts time. You're up.
Okay. I have a confession to make. I did not watch Friday's Cavaliers Celtics game live. I
Okay.
went to a play in Hartford called King James. Here on 48 Minutes, we've never done an entertainment review, but I guess there's a first time for everything, right? King James is about two unlikely friends from Cleveland, one white and one black, who developed a friendship through their mutual love of the Cavaliers and LeBron James. It was extremely well written and well acted, and every fan who has loved a team or a player and been thrilled or disappointed by them will definitely enjoy this play. Various local theater companies around the country have staged this play over the past 2 years, and its next run is going to be in New Brunswick, New Jersey, between March 18th and April 6th. So if you're in the metro New York area, I would definitely recommend King James. And if you're not, keep an eye out because it might come to a city near you at some point.
Very cool. I'd never heard of that play before. I've heard of things like Wicked and all that jazz, but nothing about King James. If that comes my way, I might have to check it out. World B?
New Brunswick, huh? The gateway to Passaic. My final thought is on Steph Curry. Steph Curry last week reminded us just how he is one of the top 10 greatest players of all time in the history of this league when he dropped 56 points against the Magic, one of the best defenses in the league on Thursday night. And then 2 nights later, he goes and throws down his first dunk in over 6 years and lost to the 76ers. So, since Jimmy Butler joined the Warriors, Steph Curry is not only averaging over 30 points a game, but he's got one of those rare 50, 40, 90 shooting stat lines, shooting over 50% from the field, over 40% from three-point range, and over 90% from the free throw line. So it may seem unrealistic to expect the Warriors to come out of a loaded Western Conference, but who saw Dallas have this run they had last season? So anything is really possible at this point when you have Curry and you have Butler here. But if somehow Steph Curry is able to collect another championship before he retires, be that this year or next season or whenever, to me, you're looking at one of the starting players in my all-time 5.
Yeah, he's got to be in there. I mean, he's the best shooter of all time, and his legacy speaks for itself. I do want to add on the Warriors, though, if they get Jonathan Kuminga back, I know I don't want to overhype him as this star of any sort, but if he comes back and can have an impact on this team with his athleticism, add another dynamic to this team, who knows? Maybe there is another gear still left, not just adding Jimmy, but the return of Kuminga that could help propel this team in a playoff series in the Western Conference. So keep an eye on that. As for my final thought, Meyers Leonard had an announcement that he was retiring from basketball, and it was a very interesting one that I'd never seen before and certainly didn't have on my bingo card for his retirement of all. That was he did a country song. He wrote an entire country music song about his career, starting from a young boy all the way to post-retirement. And now he's spending time with his family and his young son. And it was really well done. Kind of surprised to see Meyers Leonard behind a mic and producing country music, but it seems like he's got a passion for songwriting now. And I encourage all of you to go check it out because it was extremely well thought out, well done, and quite impressive. And my only question remains now, is this a new theme that we're going to see with more retirement announcements? Like, can we get a Dion Waiters freestyle for his retirement announcement? I don't know, but I thought that was quite fun to see, and job well done by Meyers Leonard there. Anything to add here before we close down shop here tonight?
Okay, you go, World.
I'm just curious, what lasted longer, his song or his NBA career?
Well, I did send a few texts out to my buddies that went to the University of Illinois, and I said, hey, this is probably more memorable than his actual career, but he's getting some buzz for it, and maybe this will help propel the start to stardom in the country music scene.
That'd be great.
And I just want to tell my fellow Celtics fans, don't despair about some of these games that they've lost recently. They played without Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis in the Cavaliers loss. No need to panic just yet. I'm not leaving the bandwagon. And if the Cavs and Celtics meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, TNT is going to go out on a really high note for that if that's their last playoff series of their contract.
Well, Bruce, I'm starting to panic a little bit because if the Celtics keep playing this poorly, I don't want you to be like Podcast P and say, I got to focus on the Celtics right now. No more podcasting for me.
Don't worry, guys. I will never, ever. I know what my priorities are.
All right. I love to hear it. I feel better now to close out the show. Well, that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes Podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.